Fitness is one of the most powerful ways to improve sexual health, overall health, and maximize longevity. Welcome back to the Rena Malik MD podcast, your source for evidence-based information about your sexual health and more. I'm Dr. Rena Malik, urologist and pelvic surgeon, and your host of the Rena Malik MD podcast. Today, I'm summarizing what I've learned from interviewing some of the biggest experts in the fitness space, including Jordan Syatt, Drs. Andy Galpin, Dr. Layne Norton, Dr. Mike Israetel, Dr. Alan Bacon, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. In today's episode, we're going to explore the link between fitness and sexual health, how those are so linked, how exercise supports not only your sex life, but also your longevity and your independence, as well as evidence-based best practices for weight loss, muscle, and strength gains. I even share a sample workout program based on everything I've learned from all these experts. All right, ready? Let's jump right in. What about the big picture? Why does fitness really matter? Sure, many of us start working out because we want to look better or feel better. But muscle mass and muscle quality are actually significant predictors of longevity and quality of life in our later years. In fact, Dr. Layne Norton shares some data.
Because if you look at the data on longevity, quality of life, it is very past the age of 50, 60, your lean mass is very predictive of your longevity and your quality of life.
Muscle is the body's largest endocrine organ, and it's a crucial way that our body interacts with the world for nearly everything we do, whether that's moving, working, caring for yourself, playing a sport or any sort of game, or even performing simple tasks. Dr. Galpin pointed out that muscle acts as a primary site for blood glucose storage and regulation. And so having an abundance of muscle mass can help us manage conditions like diabetes and improve brain and mood health.
It is the primary place in which we store and regulate blood glucose. You could talk endlessly about the problems across, not just diabetes, but anything else associated, brain health, mood regulation, all these things that are associated with poor glucose regulation.
Dr. Gabrielle Lyon also talks about the importance of skeletal muscle. She mentions that it's a metabolic sink. Skeletal muscle is responsible for 80 to 90% of carbohydrate disposal. Again, crucial for managing insulin resistance, obesity, and a variety of metabolic conditions. When we're fasting or we're ill, the body actually uses skeletal muscle to get amino acids for proteins that are needed to recover and repair our bodies. The actual act of exercise releases myokines. And these are peptides that affect a variety of organs, and they help them communicate with each other. And lastly, muscles act like an armor, improving survivability from falls and enhancing overall mobility and strength. The relationship between muscle mass and health is pretty clear. Epidemiological studies show a direct linear relationship between skeletal muscle mass and all-cause mortality. In other words, the more muscle you have, the lower your risk of dying from any cause. Now, as we age, loss of muscle mass or sarcopenia and loss of muscle function lead to what's called frailty. When you're frail, you're more likely to fall and lose independence, which means that you will have difficulty doing regular activities of daily living, like getting off a toilet seat or wiping your own ass. However, the good news is that muscle loss is both preventable and reversible at any age. Regular resistance exercise and physical activity will maintain or even increase muscle mass and function so that you can maintain that independence well into old age. Doing specifically resistance exercises can even improve mood. Layne Norton shares some interesting research on this.
The decrease in depression was an effect size of 1.7. SSRIs are anywhere from like 0.3 to 0.5. So this was like, again, I don't want to say exercise, don't take SSRIs. That's not the message I'm saying. But what I am saying is what you do with your body affects your mind.
I would say that's pretty impressive. Now, in addition to having good muscle mass, we also need good VO2 max. VO2 max is an important predictor of longevity or how long you're going to live. Dr. Galpin explains how important VO2 max is.
Like, you're just not going to find anything in the world that tells you more about how long you're going to live than your grip strength, your leg strength, and your VO2 max. Sorry.
So what is VO2 max? It's the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. And it's often considered what we call the gold standard for measuring both cardiovascular and aerobic fitness. It's typically measured in a lab while you exercise on a treadmill, and you wear a specialized mask that measures oxygen consumption as well as carbon dioxide production. You can also use different online calculators that you use either after taking a run or a walk with specific parameters that will estimate your VO2 max. Now, the normal ranges for VO2 max, an untrained, healthy man will have a VO2 max of about 35 to 40 milliliters per kilogram per minute, while women are more 27 to 31 in that same unit range. However, these scores can improve with training and are much higher in elite athletes. These scores tend to overall decrease with age and about 1% per year up to 10% per decade. And you can use this score to estimate when people will lose independence or the ability to take care of themselves independently with that number. So a VO2 max below 18 for a man or 15 to 16 for a woman means that you are no longer able to take care of yourself. And guys, VO2 max is a very strong predictor of all-cause mortality. Again, dying from any cause.
If you start looking at the data on clinical risk factors, chronic kidney disease, smoking, diabetes, heart failure, AFib, all those things, right? None of those are good. And none of them come in the stratosphere of predicting all-cause mortality as VO2 max does.
The other thing that I worry about is falls in older age. And Dr. Galpin and I spoke about how to prevent falls. And essentially, it's based on mastering 3 skills. Balance. So the ability to avoid losing your balance in the first place comes from 3 different things. Proprioception. So being able to see where you are in space, coordination, and balance. And balance can be trained even with simple techniques like walking on uneven ground. The other thing is foot speed. If you do lose your balance, you need the ability to quickly move your foot to catch yourself. And so this requires your fast twitch muscle fibers to be prevalent and to have good reaction time. And lastly, strength, especially what we call eccentric strength. So when your foot is in place and you need enough strength to stop your body's momentum and prevent hitting the ground. So you need to be able to absorb force, which again is eccentric strength. And so in order to do that, you have to have enough strength. Now, how do you train for preventing falls? So one, you can do balance training. Now, this doesn't mean like getting on a Bosu ball and doing all these crazy things. You can do it in daily life, like walking on grass, hiking, or using uneven ground. You can also try dynamic activities like walking lunges, yoga, tai chi, jumping rope, or even dance classes where you're sort of moving in motion and trying to balance throughout. You could also practice quick movement. So exercises that build power, agility, and reaction time, like quick stepping, jumping, or any type of agility drill. These help keep those fast twitch muscle fibers active. Now, strength training, regular resistance exercises, especially those involving the lower body, will help keep your muscles strong enough to catch you if you fall. Next up, let's talk about my favorite topic. Why is fitness important for sexual health? Well, research shows that sexual activity often reaches what we call moderate intensity, which is comparable to jogging or swimming. To quantify it, that's about 6 METs or metabolic equivalents. Obviously, different positions and activity levels require various movements. So you need lumbar flexion, hip flexion and extension, rotation and abduction, depending on the type of sex you're having. You also need to have some baseline physical capabilities. So aerobic fitness, again, back to that VO2 max. This is going to help you with sexual stamina and endurance. You're higher the VO2 max, the more you're going to be able to increase your ability to sustain sexual activity without getting tired. And Dr. Israel talks about that too.
Exercise has multiple ways in which it can, some ways in which it can expand your sex span, in the sense of you can be having the kind of sex you want to be later into your years than you had predicted. But what it can also do is, if you take a look at the concept of sex span as how long you're having sex for, you can also think of that as a horizontal line on the time x-axis. The y-axis, the vertical, could be like, how good is the sex? Mm-hmm. From a variety of perspectives, at least 2 being, how good is it for you, the exerciser, the beneficiary of fitness?
Yes. And
how good is it for your sexual partners? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to judge anybody getting it on with many people.
Right.
But both can be enhanced substantially. So I think the ability of exercise training and just fitness improvement to enhance the quality of the sex that you could be having, I think is probably even more substantial than the total sex span.
He also mentions that sex requires certain specific movements. So, what are the common movements that you're going to do during sexual activity? So, one is things like hip extension and flexibility. So, many positions are going to require you to have very strong and mobile hips. So, you want to be able to achieve what we call terminal hip extension without compensating with the lower back. And that's going to, one, enhance your performance, and two, avoid injury. You also need good glute strength and control. So if you have really strong glutes, you're going to have better hip movement, more forceful, lasting motion, and you're going to protect yourself from injury. Dr. Israetel mentioned some specific exercises that might be useful.
For sexual performance, I would say that various forms of very deep squats, various forms of deficit deadlifts, which means you pick up the bar from kind of lower than the ground, big range of motion, and various forms, especially of various hip thrusts and glute thrusts, are a very direct way to make sure that your thrusting ability has enough muscle mass behind it, and that, the thrusting itself now has a big range. Mm-hmm. If you take a really large muscle mass that's been trained with these compound exercises, sets of anywhere between 5 repetitions per exercise per set, all the way to even sets of 30, the muscle grows.
Now, core stability is also really important because you have to be able to absorb forces. Remember that eccentric strength to protect both the back and the hips during sexual activity or vigorous sexual activity. So you can do things like resisted crunches, hanging leg raises, and dynamic ab work that are going to help kind of improve pelvic stability, movement control, and sexual stamina. And believe it or not, people do injure themselves with things like throwing out their back during sex. And the key to preventing injuries is good mobility and strength in the hips and knees as well as core. So how do you train to have great sex throughout your entire life? Train functional movement patterns. Use exercises that are going to promote hip extension and strength like hip thrusts, lunges, step-ups, squats, and split squats. Dr. Alan Bacon also mentioned that if you want to get better at something, you have to do the thing.
There's 2 main ways to improve functional fitness. And this is where people get really confused because the term functional fitness has been essentially usurped as just a marketing ploy. And the reason that it has is because for something to be functional, 2 main things have to happen. 1, you have to have motor control. And motor control is best done by performing the act itself. So if you want to get really good at tennis, you swing a tennis racket. You don't need to have a random cable attached to something and you're throwing your arm with a cable attached to it. Like, this is not the right way to train these types of people. Mm-hmm. For the motor control aspect, for the neurological aspect of the training, you do what you want to get better at. So go thrust. And that's, I'm essentially, we're prescribing people to go have sex, which is a great thing.
Now, how do we put this into practice? Well, based on what I've learned from all these experts, this would be the ideal structure if you can organize it. So in a week, you want to do strength training at a minimum of 2 sessions per week or 4 sessions. And you can do full body or upper lower body split. Aim for about 45 to 60 minutes, but 30 minutes is fine too. Ultimately, you want to get about 10 to 20 sets per week per muscle group. You also want to incorporate cardio, my least favorite activity, but you want to do 2 to 3 zone 2 sessions a week. So you want to think brisk walks, cycling, swimming, about 20 to 40 minutes. It should be difficult, but you should be able to still maintain somewhat of a conversation. I often tell patients that even just walking is a great place to start. And Jordan Syatt agrees.
Just for the vast majority of people, walking is the most underrated, highly effective form of exercise, period. And the research supports this, and even like anecdotal data supports this, which is obvious. But if we look at the longest living societies in the world, they walk the most. And there's other things as well. Often they have lower stress. But like, what's funny is people focus so much on nutrition, and it's very important. Mm-hmm. But if we look at the longest living societies in the world, we can look at Japan, we can look at Italy, we can look at Switzerland. These are all in the top 10 longest living populations in the world. Vastly different diets.
Yeah.
But their exercise, their walking is among the most, which Greece is another one. They walk a lot.
However, having some moderate to intense cardiovascular exercise is beneficial for VO2 max and may have added benefits for mitochondrial health. You also want to sort of include mobility, so 5 to 10 minutes of dynamic stretching on those workout days. And then you want to essentially choose rep ranges that train strength, so 5 to 10 reps at higher weights, or muscular endurance anywhere between 12 to 30 reps with lower weights. And for each strength workout, you want to make sure you are doing progressive overload. So progressively add weight or reps over time in order to get muscular hypertrophy. And for most steps, you want to stop somewhere between 0 to 2 reps before failure. This is not easy. And Dr. Lane Norton explains exactly why that is.
Adaptation is never comfortable. If you are trying to grow muscle, if you're trying to get stronger, your body is not going to willingly do it unless you force it to do it.
In your strength exercises, focus on compound movements and organize your workouts around specific movement patterns like pushes, pulls, squats, hinges, and even carries. If you're doing heavier weights, 3 to 6 reps with longer rests. If you're focused on building pure strength. Dr. Israetel also offered considering supersets. So you want to alternate between unrelated muscle group exercises. This is what he says.
Take mostly exercises that train large parts of your body at the same time, compound movements. If you do like an underhand pull down, if you do like a chest press machine, you have hit like 3 muscles at the same time, back and biceps and shoulders and triceps and chest and all that stuff. And if you take those movements that don't have muscles that are related, so for example, you have a rowing machine pulling in like this. It trains muscles of your back, it trains the back of your delt, and it trains what are called the forearm flexors, biceps, etc. And then you get onto a pushing machine, like a close grip bench machine, that trains your triceps, your front delts, and your chest. 0 of the same muscles functionally. So that when you do the row, your pulling muscles tire out. As soon as you're done rowing, within 5 or 10 seconds, you're on the pushing machine pushing. Those pushing muscles are getting taxed and tired, but the pulling muscles are actually starting to recover a little bit during that time. Then as soon as you're done pushing, 5 or 10 seconds later, you're back on the row. So you alternate what's called a superset, pushing and pulling for 4 or 5 sets each, 10 to 25 reps per set, roughly. It gasses you out like crazy cardio. You're sweating bullets, you're burning tons of calories, and you're building up a ton of workload to both groups of muscles. And it's a ton of muscles, so you're checkboxing tons of muscles all at the same time, as opposed to going into the gym and doing like 1 arm at a time curls and then resting 3 minutes between sets.
Now, what can you do for sustainable weight loss if you are overweight or trying to lose a few pounds? Now, most successful weight loss approaches are not extreme. Consistently, all of the people I interviewed said calorie counting was the key to weight loss, but more important than that, it's about having sustainable change. They all recommended tracking your food at least for a short period of time to estimate how much you're taking in and where the majority of your calories are being eaten, and sort of identify how many macros you're getting, meaning protein versus carbohydrates versus fat. You don't want to take foods off limits. You don't have to just cut out your favorite foods in order to lose weight. You just want to account for them in your calorie intake. Jordan Syatt even lost weight while eating a Big Mac every single day for 30 days. Check out his video on that. Now, the most important takeaway, again, is to be consistent. You don't need to be all or nothing. Use what we call the 80% rule. Try to be on track the majority of the time, 24 to 25 days, but allow for some flexibility. Now, in terms of what are the top evidence-based tips, focus on mostly whole foods for satiety and health. Get enough protein, 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight for most individuals. You may need higher than that if you are very lean, you are elderly, or you're in a calorie deficit. And evidence shows that these higher protein diets are safe for most healthy individuals, and they don't harm your kidneys unless you have pre-existing kidney disease, in which case talk to your nephrologist or doctor. For dietary fat, Dr. Bacon had recommended a minimum of 0.3 grams per pound of body weight, mostly from unsaturated fat sources. And we know that fat is important for hormonal health, so you want to get at least 20% of your meal from fat. Another component of metabolism or calories out is called NEAT. non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is the energy that we use when we're doing anything outside of structured exercise, like fidgeting, walking, standing, daily chores. This actually plays a huge role in your overall metabolism and weight management. Now, NEAT is highly variable between individuals, and it can account for a large portion of your total daily calorie burn. In fact, according to Dr. Lane Norton and others, NEAT is a key factor in figuring out who is going to be more difficult to lose weight compared to others. And this is because some people unconsciously move a lot more throughout the day. Lane says,
NEAT is completely unconscious movement. And the reason it's important is NEAT is probably one of the biggest determinants of whether somebody is obese prone or obese resistant phenotype. People who are obese prone, if they overeat, they don't compensate by spontaneously increasing their energy expenditure. But obese resistant phenotypes, if they overeat, they tend to just compensate by, without even realizing it, they increase their energy expenditure. In fact, there's a classic study from 1995 by Levine where they overfed, I think it was, I might butcher the details of the study, but the crux will be correct. I think they overfed them by like 1,000 calories a day for like 8 weeks, something like that. And, they should have gained, something like 7-8 kilos of body fat. Mm-hmm. But the spread was like over 8 kilos to 0.8 kilos, something like that.
Wow.
Right? So one person almost didn't gain anything despite overeating by 1,000 calories. And they found that this person just spontaneously increased their energy expenditure without even realizing it. They just moved more without even realizing it. And so that's kind of that obese resistant phenotype. But again, that is a subconscious, unconscious thing.
The other thing is NEAT does change over a lifetime. Declines happen with age, when you have a sedentary job, maybe your lifestyle changes. All of these things can contribute significantly to weight gain that you're really not understanding because you're still eating the same amount of foods and you're still exercising the same. So you can try to increase your activities consciously throughout the day. So try to focus on getting enough steps. Choose active transportation like a bike. Stand more often and incorporate more spontaneous movement throughout the day. I personally take the stairs instead of the elevators at work, and so that helps me get a little bit of extra movement throughout the day. And you ever notice when you're on vacation where you're going to walk a lot, like in Europe, or for example, we just went to Vegas, you might eat poorly during vacation, but you don't necessarily always gain weight. And it's because you're moving so much more throughout the day. And lastly, we can't talk about fitness without talking about sleep. While sleep is important in general for overall health, it's also particularly important for muscle growth, weight management, physical performance, and longevity. When you get adequate high-quality sleep of about 7 to 8 hours per night, you then recover from exercise and your muscles undergo repair. It also helps you maintain healthy testosterone levels. When you don't sleep well, you notice that you're more hungry, you have less energy, you might affect your glucose regulation, so you might have more insulin spikes, and you will have more difficulty losing fat or gaining muscle. It also dramatically elevates the risk of acute injury when you don't sleep well. So bottom line is restful sleep is not only going to help enhance the results of your nutrition program and your exercise program, but it's also going to support mental focus, mood, and motivation. So here's your science-backed formula for vitality, confidence, and sexual well-being and independence at every single age. First off, lift weights consistently at least 2 to 3 times per week. Number 2, move your body with walking and higher intensity cardio. Number 3, eat enough protein and focus mostly on whole foods. Number 4, practice balance, mobility, and flexibility. Number 5, get 7 to 8 hours of high quality sleep most nights. And above all, be consistent. These small daily wins will multiply into a lifetime of health, happiness, and better sexual performance. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to share this episode with your friends and check out my Substack. I just started a Substack. I'm going to be sharing articles there covering topics just like the ones you see on my channel and my podcast. So it'll be great if you like to read and don't have time to watch a video every single time. And as always, I'm going to take care of yourself because you're worth it.